It Steals is one of the most tightly woven experiences of tension and fear that I've ever seen. There is not a single moment that goes by where you aren't holding your breath. What makes this game so much more interesting than others, though, is that this experience is not linear. There is no one path to follow, there are basically no scripted scares, and the monster is a real creature with varieties of random interactions. So, how does this game work? What about this simple setup is so scary? And how is there not just one, but 5 unique game modes that nail this experience? There are many reasons, but one aspect that continually pops up is the visual design. Beyond just the look of the monsters, the game's mechanics entirely revolve around using your sight, and it is terrifying. So, let's dig in. Classic mode is the simplest and easiest mode of the game. It mainly serves to tutorialize the player on the most basic skills, moving around, using the radar, and looking. Yes, looking is a mechanic that you need to keep in mind when you're playing this game. In fact, it's the only thing keeping you from the clutches of the monster. When you first start the game, you're dropped into the maze with one single instruction. Press R to use the radar. Following these instructions, you'll notice 3 things about the radar. First, it takes about a second to actually open. Second, what it shows is too vague to be called a map. And third, opening the radar requires you to completely give up your vision. At the moment, this means nothing to you, and you move on. But the later and later you get into the game, the more you realize that using the radar at the wrong time could end up killing you. Looking around at the maze, you'll notice the odd checker patterns on the wall, making it look more like a reject FNAF location than an intimidating labyrinth. But this is not just a maze. It's closer to an optical illusion meant to play tricks on your mind. Wandering through the halls collecting blue orbs is already tense, but then this happens. You barely even catch a glimpse of the monster before it's already gone, and now the lack of visuals is terrifying, because the monster could be anywhere and everywhere. Furthermore, every time you look over your shoulder, your brain gets increasingly lost in these checker patterned walls. The game allows a couple more glimpses of the monster before it becomes enraged, chasing after you with loud stomps and a red light that both shows how close the monster is and illuminates paths you can take to get away. This is the classic mode of It Steals, and it is only the beginning. Starting up shutter mode, you're plunged into total darkness, with no flashlight to light up the area. Instead, you have a measly camera, which flashes when you take a picture, briefly lighting up the area, and you see that it's more open, with large spaces to walk around in. Footsteps, a camera flash, and the quick skittering of a monster who is thwarted at the last second. But before it gets away, you notice how close it was to you. The cloud of darkness seems a lot more threatening now. But you can't retreat to the safety of the ceiling lights, because the fan attached is so loud that you wouldn't be able to hear the footsteps of the monster. Maybe you could use the faint light that comes in through the windows, except that it's a bit too faint. Even the orbs, which give off a good amount of light, disappear when you touch them, leaving you in the dark again. The chase sequence here also changes. Instead of simply running away, you're forced to quickly turn around and flash the monster before it gets too close to you. It's another moment where you're forced to watch how close the monster gets before you're able to get away. To make it worse, the monster actually gets faster if it can see you. If you don't make enough distance, it can easily catch up before you even flash it. However, making distance often means running into the darkness, where it becomes near impossible to navigate, leaving you hoping to find the next room as the monster barrels towards you. This mode also functions because of the limited amount of batteries that you have. The more vision you give yourself, the less resources you have to defend against the monster, until you run out and it comes screeching down the halls, unable to be stopped or slowed anymore. In this mode, you're only given one instruction: seek. Hide and seek is a strange mode, and one of the most memorable because it can go from this to this. Your objective is to not find the monster. Don't play along. This would be easy, except for the fact that the monster can be anywhere, but is always close to you. The intensity scale for this mode looks something like this. It starts out tense, yes, but you have more control over the situation, so it's not as scary as the other modes, until you find the monster. At that point, when it becomes the Seeker, you lose all control. Now, just like you were wary of your own sight when trying not to find the monster, you have to be wary of the monster's sight, staying low to the ground and diving into hiding places before you get caught. Of course, you can also see that same red light that the monster is giving off, knowing that it's getting closer with every second, and you could be caught the next time it turns the corner. This mode also breaks from the first two, as instead of being scared of what you don't see, you're scared of what you do, and what you do see really isn't much. Somehow, it turns a lump of pixels into something that'll make your breath catch and your heart skip a beat every time you catch a glimpse of it. But what makes this mode so awful is the environment. The monster's hiding form is a small lump of pixels on the ground, which can disappear behind big boxes, blend in with the messes of bottles and shelves, or even be just around the corner. And there are a lot of corners, awkward junctions that hide just enough to function as hiding spots. It makes every single step agonizing, because the monster could pop up from a place you didn't even see, ready to hunt you down in the same places it was hiding. The first thing you notice is the maze. You start off in a vault, but everything outside of it is overrun with cracks and mold and what looks like veins. The next thing you notice is the ultra-loud scanner on your wrist that keeps beeping and blaring out static that fills your ears. The last thing you notice is too little, too late. This mode does another take on the Weeping Angel archetype in horror games, a monster that only moves when you aren't watching it. The difference here is that it's really easy to look away. When not enraged, the monster appears as a completely normal wall, which can be spotted if you're careful enough, but blend in so well with the dirty walls and the darkness that it gets difficult to do so. Of course, there isn't just one that you're dealing with, there can be upwards of 3. Furthermore, the scanner, which helps you locate the hidden monsters, requires you to give up your sight, just like the radar. Even if you're staring the monster in the face, pull out your scanner and it'll start moving. Most importantly though, these monsters are trying to trick you. They hide in plain sight, they group up to corner you, they can even make noises at you to get you to turn around. They're constantly pushing you into places you don't want to be. And to make it all worse, you're on a timer, so you can never take as much time as you want to. The one thing you can't trust in this mode is your eyes, because they'll intentionally take shortcuts and skip right over the monsters hidden right in front of you. Let your mind stray even just a little bit, and you'll fall right into the monster's traps. Unlike the last mode, where you can't trust your eyes, you can only trust your eyes here. The monster is completely invisible to you, but so are you to it. There's only one way to know where the monster is. You have to watch it tear through the maze, throwing objects everywhere, making for the most stressful stealth in the game. Obviously, the monster makes quite a bit of sound, which lets you know if you're near it, and sometimes even lets you locate it, but this is inconsistent for a couple of reasons. First, sometimes the objects don't make audible noises, especially if you're further away. Second, since the objects actually get moved around, you might find yourself in an empty room, in which there are no objects near you to make sound. And finally, the sound is hard to discern in the maze-like rooms of the map. They're simply too unreliable for you to know where the monster is exactly, especially when there's so many noises going on at the same time. However, what you see is almost always correct. Sometimes you can even tell which way the monster is going, and when it turns around to go the other way. In addition to looking for the monster though, you have to look around for yourself. There's so many things to knock over and make noise that if you don't watch your own steps, you will alert the monster to your position too. On top of that, you have to keep track of where your fail-safes, the devices, are. Since they take time to charge, you have to leave them behind. The only way to remember where they are is by being spatially aware and finding the quickest way back to them. Both skills that are based in sight, at least in this game mode. Needless to say, this is the hardest and most intense mode of the game. You rarely, if ever, get a break, because the monster is constantly hunting you, and it can get extremely close without entering a chase. In fact, this is the only mode where the monster can be right next to you, without killing you. To support this, both visually and audially, this is the loudest mode of the game. The objects being thrown around act as both a way to show you where the monster is, and a way to terrify you, especially when you're trying to be quiet yourself. This is only amplified when The visual design of its steals is incredibly interesting. Each game mode has its own unique mechanics centered around using your sight, as well as the monster's sight, to survive. Without these mechanics, the game wouldn't even be the slightest bit scary. Plus, there's a ton more hidden mechanics that change up the game even more. In Classic mode, the monster can imitate the orbs that you're collecting. In Shutter mode, random noises get you to panic and waste your batteries. In Hide and Seek, lights shut off randomly and the monster goes crazy if you don't play along. In Living Halls, the monsters take control of your scanner and try to trick you into opening the vault early. In Phantom mode, TVs give off blue light that looks like the orbs, and your own devices are incredibly loud and bright. It isn't just the individual modes that use visual design though. The entire game is based on visual tricks and sight-based gameplay. Look at the radar again. When seen from a top-down perspective, the map isn't much of a maze at all. Yet, when in first person, it quickly gets confusing, especially in the dark. Each mode also makes it harder to spot the monster, from Classic mode's beast sneaking up behind you, to Phantom mode's ghost literally being invisible. The game is as much, if not more, about finding the monster as it is about making sure the monster doesn't find you. Other areas of design also support the visual mechanics. As I've mentioned, the map is different for every game mode, made specifically for each unique mechanic. For instance, the rooms in Shutter mode are larger so you don't waste batteries flashing small spaces, and the rooms in Phantom mode are full of clutter so you can see the invisible monster coming. The most blatant example is Living Halls, which has vaults scattered around that you need to periodically hide in. This makes the timer you're on relevant, as you can't get every orb in one go, forcing you to hurry up, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do. Even the seemingly innocuous details about the game are actually vital to this experience. You may have noticed that the game is pixelated, despite being a 3D game. This is an intentional choice by the developer, and not just for visual style. In fact, there's an option to turn off that filter, and the game still looks good without it. However, this option is directly stated to be for accessibility reasons. Why? Well, because it makes the game easier and less scary. Obviously, the lower the quality of your vision, the easier it is to miss important details. Your eyes don't take in every bit of visual information, but instead give the brain partial data to turn into images. In order to save energy, though, the brain takes as many shortcuts as possible while doing so. This is why optical illusions work. Your brain lies to you about what you're actually seeing. In most cases, this is good, as it saves your brain from being overloaded with information. But it can make things difficult if you're trying to spot a deadly monster that's hiding from you. All this may seem obvious, but the way it's applied in its steals is very clever. I mentioned that the checker pattern walls look almost like an optical illusion. This is dependent on the pixelation though. Without the pixelation, you can clearly tell where the walls start, end, meet, and diverge. After all, you can see the angle of each wall separately. When it is pixelated though, it becomes a lot harder to separate those angles, especially from far distances, and especially when you're constantly moving around and looking over your shoulder. The pixelation also messes with your depth perception, your sense of color, and, of course, your ability to see details. With the pixelation, it's hard to spot legs, as it boasts the same checker pattern as the walls behind it. With the pixelation, you barely can tell what you just lit up with the camera. With the pixelation, the hider blends in way better with the messes of shelves, bottles, and boxes. With the pixelation, your eyes skip over the mimics right next to you. With the pixelation, it's hard to tell if the box that just got thrown is 10 or 5 meters away. The game can still be scary without the pixelation and without these other small details, but for a game that's trying to play tricks on your eyes, it makes all the difference. It Steals is a terrifying game, but it is also incredibly fun because it breaks down a mechanic that's often taken for granted in horror games. I not so recently did a video on Iron Lung, and while that game opts to take away almost all of your vision, It Steals uses your vision against you and tricks you into panicking. Once you get past that initial fear though, you get an extremely tense and satisfying experience. Thank you for watching this video. I love this type of stuff, so if you enjoyed it, please leave a comment. I may not respond to them all, but I do read them all. And if you like horror game video essays, check out mine about Iron Lung, or prepare for ones I might do in the future. I've been busy with college the past few months, but videos should come out more frequently now. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.